Hey everyone, I was kind of questioning where to go with Grim Dawn videos. I pretty much have won the game. I have a lot of builds that I've put out that I enjoy, some need updating, and there are more builds I want to do in the future. But I can't make daily videos, or near daily videos, out of builds. They take like way too much time, and going from nothing to full build, I mean, it's a lot of work to do that. So after doing the basics videos, and kind of covering almost everything, I think I'm gonna go on to doing skills videos. And what these videos are gonna entail is I'm gonna pick a skill, I'm gonna go over the skill, go over its modifiers, if it has any, and any transmuters it has, what the skill's role is, what the damages are, like hints at builds and other abilities that synergize well with that skill, and do the same if it has any transmuters, because let's face it, transmuters can really change a skill and really change a build. So in today's video, we're going to start with Callidor's Tempest. Callidor's Tempest is a short-ranged AoE centered on your character. It's spammable and it scales with casting speed. So, Callidor's Tempests. Master Callidor famously served as a general in King Samuel's army. While deployed on the front lines, Callidor preferred a technique which, by creating a sudden concentrated burst of raw aether energy, would ignite the air around him in an arcane tempest. So there are 4 things to Callidor's Tempest. It has meter radius, main hand damage, fire damage, and aether damage. The radius increases as you put points in it, as does all of the damage types, including the main hand damage. Now, because it has main hand damage, you can include your weapon's damage in your Callidor's Tempest damages. So you can gear a little bit of physical damage in there if you so desire, but also Callidor's Tempest will proc life leech effects. It will also include all flat elemental damage you get from items and other abilities, like say Escandra's Elemental Exchange. Callidor's Tempest does scale with fire and aether, but you don't necessarily have to gear those entirely. It is generally a good idea to pick one and go with it, but gearing both will obviously make the ability the strongest it can be. Callidor's Tempest can be included in a lot of builds. It can be your main damage dealer, or it can be, say, a crowd clearing move when things get really tight on you, or with its transmuter, you can actually use it as a one-time bomb. I'm going to look at Inferno before I look at the transmuter. Inferno. The Tempest becomes a blazing inferno, searing flesh and melting armor. This adds on some flat burn damage, gives more % fire damage and aether damage to the main ability, and it reduces the target's armor for 5 seconds. As Inferno is built up, the burn damage and armor reduction also builds up. This is handy in case you do have a lot of physical damage going on your character, or if you're grouping with people that rely on physical damage, as reducing the target's armor will increase their damage output. Callidor's Tempest is an ability with the transmuter. It is called Wrath of Agrax. Agrax was renowned for channeling such immense power into the Tempest that the resulting explosion would leave nothing but ashes of anyone foolish enough to stay within reach. However, this technique required great concentration and could not be repeated without rest. What this transmuter does to the Tempest is it adds a 6-second skill recharge time to it, but it raises the damage immensely, and it adds on 50% main hand weapon damage, gives it a total damage modifier of 150%, and has a 100% chance of knockdown for 1.5 seconds. What this means is it turns the Tempest into a one-time bomb. If you do 1 point on the Tempest itself and 1 point on the Wrath of Agrax transmuter, you will have a massive attack that can knock down any knockdownable target 100% of the time. This is great for dealing with Cronley's guys, spiders, and various and sundry other enemies in the game. You can also knock down some really powerful heroes as well, such as the Locksmere Night Mage. This transmuter also allows you to add Callidor's Tempest to pretty much any build you're using the Arcanist with, and it will be a handy 2-point wonder ability because it's just another source of crowd control. Now, in these videos, for showing off the damage of a particular ability, I think it's actually going to be impossible to get accurate numbers because equipment and stats are going to tweak things a little bit here and there. However, I will be able to show things like casting speed and give a relative impression on where an ability goes from 1 to its cap. So for Callidor's Tempest here, its casting speed, I mean, it's okay on its own, but as you can see, as we grow it, its damage actually increases quite a bit. 40% main hand damage is nothing to shake a stick at. And then we're gonna cap out Inferno as well. It reduces the target's armor by 108. And at 26 out of 16, you get 55% main hand damage, and when you're fully kitted out, you get a whole lot of fire and aether damage. It also has a huge radius. So this character is fairly well equipped for Callidor's Tempest, and as you can see, you hit a very large area, and it goes very, very, very fast. To me, Callidor's Tempest just screams Battle Mage, and that's what you're going to be seeing mostly in this video. Warcry is another AoE centered on your character that can greatly help you burn things down with the Tempest, as you'll just take 33% of the enemy's health away from them and then burn them down with the ability. Blitz can help you get into the middle of all the enemies. Since it's Blitz, you just run into them, pound whatever you just targeted, and then again burn it down with the Tempest. You also have great passive options with military conditioning, shield training. Since you don't need a caster offhand for Callidor's Tempest, you can go a shield and it is effective, but you can also just use a caster offhand if you so desire. Veterancy, another great passive. Decorated Soldier, great passive. You could go down to Scars of Battle if you so desire. Mater's Will and Fighting Spirit are both pretty handy to pick up as well. And then the toggled passive Field Command works great with Callidor's Tempest. You'll get an extra offensive and defensive ability boost and an armor boost, which will help you survive given how close you have to be to the enemies. One thing of note in these videos, you should probably ignore the points in a lot of these trees because I'm going to go be referencing other characters just to get the visuals for the various trees. So this is my Aether Ray guy. Ignore the points. These aren't what I'd use for Callidor's Tempest. But since we're talking about the Sorcerer, he is a fine example of just pointing at these abilities. Flame Touch works great with the Tempest, as fire is one of the main damages. If you also happen to have some flat lightning damage, it'll be added into the Tempest as well. You'll also get an offensive ability increase here. Temper will give you some flat physical and percent physical damage. Again, it will be worked into the Tempest, and some armor. Blast Shield can give you a nice little defensive boost when your health drops below 75%. Within the Arcanist tree itself, one of the main abilities you focus with Callidor's Tempest is Electrous Flash Freeze. It's another AoE centered on you, and it reduces fire resistance on the enemies by a lot, which will increase the damage of the Tempest by a lot, of course. It will also be able to hold enemies in place, which will help with your survivability. I recommend going for Reckless Power as well. The casting speed and the fact that it fits your 2 damages works great. I also do recommend Iskander's Elemental Exchange for pretty much every factor in its ability this time around. With the Aether Ray build, you kind of go for it just for the regen, but for this build, all of its aspects fit in with the ability Callidor's Tempest, and Mental Alacrity is great at 10 out of 10. Fabric of Reality is helpful as well. I'll also note you can use it in an Agrax Aether Ray build. I've used it before, both as a spammable ability and using it in the Wrath of Agrax mode. It works great as a complementary skill to the Aether Ray. The Aether Ray is single target burn damage, while the Tempest is your area of effect, burn them all down damage. Devastation can also help you deal more damage, burst damage, to enemies, as its damage types also mesh well with the Tempest. Of course, Mirror of Aractes you'll want in any Arcanist build. Panetti's doesn't exactly work great with Callidor's Tempest, in my opinion. I mean, you could argue Panetti's ranged, Tempest close range, but for that, I'd rather do the Aether Ray. Trojan Sky Shards, I'd probably pass on as well. You're already doing area damage around you. You probably don't need the burst from Trojans. Though I will mention, if you have a Warp Fire weapon that converts cold damage to fire damage, there might be something in using Fire Lightning Trojan Sky Shards. Blackwater Cocktail could potentially be used as well if you're using it at range, or if you're using the Tempest in the Wrath of Agrax mode. You could be doing a Blackwater build and using Wrath of Agrax to keep things away from you. I guess you could say the same thing about Fire Strike, using Wrath of Agrax as the occasional bomb while you're fire striking away. You could also use Granado with its knockdown chance while you're spamming in Tempest. Knock the enemy down and just burn them again. Canister Bomb as well, you get that 100% chance stun from Concussive Bomb, and it's a nice AoE in and of itself. You could also use Flashbang to confuse your enemies, lower their defensive ability, have the fumble and impaired aim, and slow procs on Searing Light. I also recommend the Spellbreaker for some similar reasons to the Battle Mage. You end up with some great defensive options and the ability to just jump on a target and burn everything around it. Shadow Strike lets you do just that. You Shadow Strike in and you spam your Tempest and everything will die. Meanwhile, you'll have Pneumatic Burst keeping you safe. With Pneumatic Burst, you can use Breath of Blagothian, which will reduce the skill recharge on the burst itself and give you some bonus health regen. So with this, you can keep yourself alive, and Pneumatic Burst with the Arcanist native defensive abilities is an amazing defensive array that will keep you completely safe from most things. It is a little RNG because of Shadow Dance, but otherwise it's great. You also have Veil of Shadow for lowering enemy offensive ability and total speed, and thus more survivability for you. Though Night's Chill probably isn't going to be part of this character's build as much, you could potentially pick up Phantasmal Armor though for the Pierce Res and the bonus armor. Blade Barrier is another handy addition. Another oh shit button next to Mirror of Herocrates is always nice. You could also potentially pick up Blade Trap for a little bit more crowd control. But outside of those abilities, the Nightblade doesn't provide much else, though I do absolutely recommend it for those abilities. Oh, and I'll also point out, you can use a Wrath of Agrax setup with Anarasta's Blade Burst, using the Blade Burst as your bait attack, and the Tempest as a bomb. You can actually deal some pretty good damage. Now in these videos, unlike the class combinations basics videos I did, I'm not going to go over every single build, archetype, etc, etc, etc for the ability, but I am going to point out handy little things in the other classes. Now for Calidor's Tempest, I don't actually recommend a Warlock as much, or a Druid as much. There are better, more effective builds, in my opinion, in these two classes for combining with your Arcanist, but I will point out in the Occultist tree, you have Blood of Dreeg for a heal, Aspect of the Guardian for its massive physical resistance ability it grants you while it's up, and Storm Spirit for 100% elemental damage, which the devotion abilities of note seem pretty obvious to me. Aether Fire off the Imp, since you'll be, using fire and aether damage, you'll be dealing more fire and aether damage if you attach that to Calidor's Tempest. You could also attach Arcane Bomb, since you'll lower the aether resistance of the things that blow up in it. Time Dilation is, of course, a good go-to if you need the cooldown reduction. The Revenant can work for getting some lifesteal going on. And I also like to use the Elemental Seekers off the Blind Sage, since those deal some pretty good elemental damage once they're leveled up a bit. And they'll be able to go out and explore while you're just sitting there blowing things up. You may be able to get away with the Elemental Storm as well, since you'll be dealing a lot of fire damage, which is, of course, elemental damage, and it shouldn't deal too bad damage. But also, of course, Ulzin's Torch with its Meteor Shower. Ulzin's Torch is kind of a go-to for fire damage if you're building fire damage. It's also got some nice nodes on top of the damage nodes, in addition to having, a really great ability. And that should just about cover Calidor's Tempest. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments below. I would like some constructive criticism. It's a new style I'm doing. I'm trying to do, more quality editing and more organized videos, less of the ums and uhs in there. I'm sure there are a couple though. And I'm trying to do more videos that are kind of more tightly edited and that can deliver information well still. So thanks for watching again. I hope to see you guys next time for another Grim Dawn Skills video. Thanks for watching.